but we're not going to get into the details of that sort of level of detail. I think you used the word detail. I understand that. But sadly, this isn't the moment to get into that level of detail.
What in the hell was that? Our Minister of Internal Trade really blessing us with words of wisdom right there. Why is it that the more our country slips into despair, the weirder and more vague the government's messaging becomes? But not only are we officially in a recession now, but now we also have a brand new problem on our hands, one of epic proportions. And this might be the straw that breaks the camel's back, because I don't think we'll be able to weather that storm. So this is downright embarrassing, and the last 11 years are really catching up to us now, and the rest of the world is calling us out for it and downgrading us in the rankings. My name is Eli Daniel, and this is The Right Call. Like, share, subscribe, hype this video up. Any interaction on this channel helps push the truth out, maybe someday break that CBC-induced coma that so many Canadians are under. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button, especially if you're right of center and finally want some common sense commentary. Man, researching this video really made me sad, because we're going to look at the list of the best countries in the world and just how badly Canada slips, so stick around, you don't want to miss that reveal. But for now, our coziness with China and the CCP is starting to catch up in the worst way possible.
The Trump administration unveiled plans to slap new tariffs on 60 trading partners for what it says are their failures to restrict imports of goods produced using forced labor. The U.S. Trade Office said the lack of meaningful restrictions on goods produced using forced labor undercuts American workers and forces them to compete on what it calls an unlevel playing field.
Because China might pretend to be our friend, but they'll never be our family. And right now, the US, our cousin, is really showing us the tough love that we need to get our act together, finally. So today was announced that the US will be implementing tariffs on a wide variety of countries, 60 countries to be exact, anywhere between 10 to 12.5%. And this comes after the Trump admin showed concern regarding forced labor, not necessarily in the countries with the tariffs, but with the imports of goods coming from countries that do have forced labor. Wink, wink, China. So how did this come about? Well, the Office of Trade Representative launched an investigation back in March of this year looking into the unfair trade practices, namely, again, the use of forced labor. So I'll let the political commentators of all other 60 countries dive into why the US chose to do this with their country, but I'll focus just on Canada, and I went digging into that report to see what are they accusing us of? And spoiler alert, it ain't good. The information available indicates that Canada is failing to effectively enforce its forced labor import prohibition. Although Canada's import prohibition came into effect nearly 6 years ago, the number of enforcement actions Canada has taken to prevent the entry of forced labor goods is minimal. Color me surprised. Canada saying one thing and then doing the other. The Canada Border Service Agency, the agency responsible for enforcing Canada's forced labor import prohibition, does not appear to publish official statistics or other information regarding its enforcement efforts. The little information that is available regarding enforcement statistics suggests that between 2020 and 2026, Canadian authorities intercepted just 50 shipments for suspicion of forced labor, with only 2 shipments ultimately prohibited entry. By contrast, in 2024, CBP, that's Custom and Border Protection in the US, the equivalent to our CBSA here, denied entry to 6,386 shipments pursuant to UFLPA enforcement alone. Oh man. And this is in line with what CBSA has been saying. There's a lack of staff, a lack of resources, and a complete inability to actually verify shipment. I think I read somewhere that something like 2% of shipments that come into Canada are even examined. Do you understand how much of a Swiss cheese Canada's border is? It's porous, and transnational gangs have been utilizing that to their advantage, by the way. But wait, the report gets worse. Further, Canada has not taken action to restrict the importation of goods from which there are known risks of forced labor. For example, Canada has taken only minimal action to investigate the importation of goods that are subjected to CBP's WRO or findings, or to comprehensively address forced labor goods produced in regions of concerns. Moreover, independent reporting highlights that there is a high risk that Canadian companies are profiting from the importation of forced labor goods such as seafood, coffee, cocoa, and cotton. Canada has also been described as a dumping ground for re-exports of forced labor products barred from entry into the United States. And this is what blows my mind time and time again. It seems that the US is holding Canada up to higher standards than even our government does. They are looking out for the well-being of our country and our economy. Meanwhile, our government is just just turning a blind eye on some severe corruption. And it freaking saddens me to see that it takes, again, our cousins in the South to help us more than we help ourselves. And we've seen this with Bill C-22, by the way, when tech companies in the US fought back for your freedom, for you and I's freedom more than our elected officials did, and especially more than our media did. Same thing with C-9, the Hateful Speech Act. Everyone's fighting back from the US. The CRTC, same thing. Bill C-11, implementing a hidden tax on all Canadians using streaming services. Well, it's the Americans, especially the American Congress, that are fighting back on your behalf. Wrap your head around that one.
With respect to these 301 tariffs, this is not a surprise. It's something that the U.S. has been planning for a few months. I think very importantly is that two things. One is that the tariffs are consulted for 30 days or 30 plus days. Secondly, explicitly in the decision, Canada, the carve-out for CUSMA is referenced and maintained. So that puts us in a position where, again, we would still have the best trade deal of any of the U.S. trade counterparts.
Wait a second, I gotta comment on this first. To me, it sounds like cope, severe cope, because I love how he's saying that we have the best trade deal with the US still. But just a couple days ago, when it was announced that Canada is officially in a recession, what did Carney blame? Trump and the tariffs. Of course. Why not? So which is it, damn it? Like, be honest. Is it that we have the best trade deal in the world, and as such, it's not the tariffs causing our recession, and it's solely you, Mr. Carney? Or is it that we don't have the best trade deal, and it's completely the Trump's fault, the US tariffs? Man, the gaslighting is intense.
I want to say as well that the issue, the motivation of the U.S. Action, the 301 tariffs against, or proposed tariffs against a variety of countries, is something that we share. Canada has a very strong legislative regime against forced labor in supply chains. We don't want any element of forced labor coming in goods and services, and we want to use our influence to eliminate this practice of forced labor and child labor.
You sure about that?
Because how convenient of you to say that now that the US is slapping us with tariffs, that Trump is fed up with dealing with you and finally taking steps to enforce our own laws on ourselves. Because I don't recall you holding the same level of convictions when Michael Ma was berating an expert witness during a committee hearing about forced labor in China.
Have you witnessed forced, just a short answer, have you witnessed forced labor in Shenzhen? Yes or no? So did you get that
I
from
work closely
hearsay?
with Human Rights Watch, where researchers did witness it.
So thank you.
But if this is not explicit enough of a denial for you, how about this?
To challenge a witness on forced labor in China. Do you believe there's forced labor in China? You do? Is that a yes, Mr. Bach?
Sorry, I'm late for a meeting.
Yes, but can you please explain your comments at the Industry Committee?
I have no comment at this time.
The Conservatives are making it seem like you don't care about forced labor in China or you don't believe in it. What do you think of that?
Well, they like to exaggerate always.
Was it really an exaggeration? Do you believe there is forced labor in China?
I believe there are forced laborers all over the world.
What about China specifically?
Well, all over the world.
But China specifically?
Sorry, I need to run.
And run along he did. You know, nothing ever really ages well with the liberals. And they try to memory hole all of this stuff, but Pepperidge Farm remembers.
Pepperidge Farm remembers.
Hell, even Europe is starting to come around and bend the knee when it comes to realizing that China might not actually be their friend and actually more a wolf in sheep's clothing. Because this just came out, the EU is gearing up to warn its citizens and companies about a potential trade war with China as the bloc starts weighing new restrictive measures against Beijing. See, that's the thing with Canada and Europe. Our populations have grown super complacent. We start taking the US for granted and believing that they owe us their support when in reality, they really owe us nothing.
Western Europe, for the better part of 20 or 30 years, they have not had to spend on defense because the U.S. security shield has allowed them to instead spend their money on building up a very vast and robust social safety network. In my time as a senator and before that as a state representative, you would hear often from constituents about how come they have this and that in Europe and we don't have it here. Well, one of the reasons why is because these very rich countries were spending their money on social programs instead of defense because we were covering their defense.
And this is exactly what Trump has been trying to remind the world about, and exactly why the world has been throwing a temper tantrum because of it. Like an angry 18-year-old young adult who's being told by his parents that it's either you start paying rent or you move out and fend for yourself. This, by the way, applies squarely to Canada as well. We took America's market access for granted. And once we were told to start pulling our own weight, which would benefit Canadians, by the way, we threw a fit and decided to fight back. Like, for example, this comment from a liberal saying that we complied with the US's requirement, to keep the peace, but the tariffs, such as the one we're speaking of right now, are just there to appease the orange toddler. And then he says, do we seem compliant any longer, insinuating that Canada is fighting back? To which I replied, cutting off the nose to spite the face. Wow, we're so non-compliant, we console ourselves by saying, as we suffer while literally destroying ourselves economically. This whole thing is so silly. And that's the problem. There's so many individuals that attach their sense of self, for some reason, to Canada fighting back against the US. But here's the fact that now is really hard to deny. Canada's ranking on the list of best country to live in just collapsed. In 2023, we were the second best country in the world to live in, according to this ranking. In 2024, we were the fourth. Well, today, we're 19th, and I'll show you the complete list in just one second, but first we have to look at something that is incredibly perversive, actually, and it's that of why the massive drop. And before you blame the liberals, yes, of course, but let's look a little bit more analytical. So the ranking was based off 100 different metrics that were grouped together in 8 categories. You had governance, economic development, health, public health, infrastructures, opportunities, natural environment, and culture/tourism, with different weight being given to each of them. Culture and tourism being the last one at 6.1% weight, whereas governance being the top one at 16.7%. But here's where it gets really damning. See, prior to this year's ranking, the metrics were based on the population's perceived value of these various metrics. Whereas this year, they actually looked at data and statistics. They backed it up with more than just feelings and good wish. So you might think, okay, well, did other countries see a massive drop like Canada did, going from 4th place to 19th place because of this new methodology? No, actually, not really. Switzerland, for example, state number 1. But Canada dropped 15 spots. So here's the only logical conclusion. Canadians are delusional, and I mean that without prejudice. I'm actually being very serious here on a psychological level. To have such a significant spread between reality backed by facts, data, and statistics, and that of perceived feelings can only point to delusion. How else can we go from being perceived as the 4th best country in the world according to our citizens to looking at data and being the 19th? That's a huge drop. And the dangerous part in all this that nobody's talking about is that nothing will change or improve so long as people are under this mass delusion. Because to improve, you need to first admit that you have a problem. I mean, that's a well-known principle. So to me, this supports the theory that legacy media is not only failing at their job, it's actually worse. They're purposely hiding the truth from Canadians. So anyways, the list as promised. Switzerland number 1, Denmark 2, Sweden 3, Germany 4, Netherlands 5, Norway 6, UK, man, the UK sucks. They're 7th. Oh, wow. Canada ranks below the United States. We're behind the people that we keep attacking all the time. But hey, at least we're ahead of South Korea, I guess. So of course I put the blame on Canadians for their inability to inform themselves, but most of the blame lays squarely on our legacy media and our government that is propping them up and making them behave like propaganda. And nowhere is it better exemplified than this very recent example.
Do you think Canadians blame Mark Carney, or do you think they blame Mr. Trump for that recession?
You mean the fact that we're the only country in the G7 that's in a recession?
Yes.
Right. So
it seems like Canadians are laying the blame for their economic troubles with Mr. Trump, but you don't agree with that.
Well, maybe you are protecting Mr. Carney from his economic record, but here's the reality. Mr. Trump's policies are affecting all G7 countries, and none of them are in recession. Mexico shares a border with the United States. Mexico is not in recession. Only Canada, under Mark Carney's liberal policies, is in a recession. France is not in a recession, UK is not in a recession, Germany's not in a recession, Italy's not in a recession, Japan's not in a recession. Only Canada among G7 countries is in a recession. And only Canada among North American countries is in a recession. So it seems that the other countries, despite Mr. Trump's unfair tariffs, have been able to craft policies to avoid recession. It's only here under Mark Carney's policies that we find ourselves in a recession.
How insane to think that the media is taking a confrontational tone against Poilievre for him calling out Carney's recession. How dare you not call out Trump like Carney and the media is doing? How dare you traitor to Canada or something? And it leads to things like this. Carney's Liberals hit a record high 50% support according to a Léger marketing poll. Cool. First time a governing party in 23 years gets this high. Yep. We're in a recession. We're literally just in a recession, and yet Carney's shooting up in the polls. And this is what propaganda does. It works. It works. And the media is acting like this protection racket for Carney and the Liberals. And it's working. And this is why I count on you to share this video, to share the truth, to share the information, because if we can just open up the eyes of one person, then perhaps we can do so for 2 or 3 or 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, and maybe someday break that CBC-induced coma that so many Canadians are under. So with all these talks of Canada being in a recession, the natural next step for Carney and the Liberals, the government, and just Canadians in general is to answer the following question. How do we get out of this mess?
We need to reverse the Liberal policies that have given Canada the only recession anywhere in the G7. Conservatives have put forward positive plans to unleash our growth, including a real plan to incentivize the Americans to sign on to tariff-free trade, eliminating capital gains tax on reinvestments in Canada, ending the industrial carbon tax, in fact, cutting taxes on work, energy, home building, and investment, making Canada the fastest place anywhere on earth to get a permit, the freest economy in which to trade, work, invest, and get a return. Let's restore the promises of this country where anybody who gets out of bed in the morning can find a terrific job, a job that gives them a great paycheck, that buys affordable food and homes.
Sounds like some common sense to me, and to think that we've gone to a point in Canada where such policies are now at odds with what's actually happening day to day. One thing that Poilievre mentions that I find very interesting, making Canada the fastest place on earth to get a permit, the freest place to trade, to invest, and to work. See, there are countless opportunities around Canada right now to unlock newfound wealth in places we'd never thought possible. You know, oil and gas gets all the attention, whether that's positive or negative. However, Canada is also ridiculously rich in mineral and metal deposits. And I can't believe I'm going to use this angle here because honestly, it's going to make me sound like a liberal. But there are new ways to extract metals that fit every hallmark of sustainability. For example, while mining for metals like cobalt, plenty of scrap known as tailings is produced. The thing is that in some places, these tailings are filled with silver. The issue was that when silver was trading at $15 an ounce, like not too long ago, it was not profitable to process these tailings to extract the silver. But now, with silver trading at roughly $80 an ounce, there is a massive golden opportunity, or maybe I should say silver opportunity. And it's starting to tickle the ears of politicians. Ontario has been leading the charge. See, in this article, Ontario issues first permit that opens up old mine tailings for exploration. Ontario's Recovery of Minerals regime passed in 2025 makes it easier to explore old mines. Last year, Ontario passed Bill 5, also known as the Protect Ontario by Unleashing the Economy Act. Actually, that's a pretty clever name, which amended the Mining Act with the objective of cutting permit times in half to 2 years, in part by creating a single point of contact with all provincial approvals, or for all provincial approvals. The province also amended the Mining Act through its Recovery of Minerals regime, which is specifically tailored to streamline the permit process to explore old or abandoned mines and their waste, known as tailing. This becomes a golden or silver opportunity for Ontario. And I gotta say, I'm pleasantly surprised to see the government of Ontario pass such pro-business, pro-economy, pro-development laws. I've been saying this for a very long time. We could be so rich in Canada if only we exploited that lottery ticket that we won by being born over this soil. So we got to start being innovative in Canada if you want to get out of this mess. And I want to thank my good friend at Nord Precious Metals for pointing me in the direction of such a solution. They are an example of a project that fits the opportunity being presented by the Ontario government to a T. With their recent tailings acquisition, they could actually apply for that permit that I mentioned earlier and enter production faster than would normally be possible for a mining company, which traditionally can take 15 to 20 years years to get to production. That's wild. Thank God for these new laws in Ontario. Because yeah, with the ability to fast track production, thanks to these new permitting laws, it enables them to take advantage of high silver prices while bringing economic activity to the economy and the province. And you know what? Canada as a whole. Really, it's a win-win for everyone. And this is what I love. It's a true Canadian mining story. Like the good old days, but using modern techniques to continue the legacy. And I think this is one of many opportunities that Canada can grasp to become wealthy again. Now, if you've liked this report and want to get involved with this channel, aside from liking, sharing, subbing, commenting, hyping this video up, if you want to go a step further and help financially, well, I have a Patreon. The link is in the description. It's $8 a month, and the support goes a long way in helping spread the truth and spending more time doing research and recording videos. If you rather just do a one-time donation, there's also a PayPal link. Every single donation means the world to me. Now, if you want to see the last video where we talk about, well, the month of June, which is Pride, but also more of the recession, click on the link right here. It's kind of cheeky, kind of funny. You'll enjoy it. But for the time being, my name is Elliot Dango, and I'll see you next report.